a waitress lost her job in front of a packed diner for doing something no one expected, protecting a quiet stranger who only wanted a moment of peace. But that stranger was Keanu Reeves, and what he did the very next morning didn't just change her life, it stunned an entire city. What happened next will leave you speechless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The heat settled over Los Angeles like a thick, unmoving blanket, the kind that clung to the skin and made every breath feel heavy. Even inside Harbor Grill, the small diner tucked near the Santa Monica boardwalk, the air conditioners were losing the battle. The ceiling fans hummed tirelessly, but all they managed was to push warm air in slow circles above the crowded tables. It was the kind of day when tempers ran short. Customers complained more than usual, and exhaustion settled deep in the bones of anyone working long hours. Maya Lopez felt every bit of it as she hurried between booths with practiced efficiency. She had already worked 9 hours, and the second half of her double shift still stretched ahead of her. Sweat gathered at the back of her neck, and her feet ached from constant movement, but she kept her smile steady. She always did. Her co-workers teased her for it, sometimes saying they didn't understand how she stayed so calm and kind through the lunch rush, the dinner rush, and the endless stream of impatient tourists. Maya never explained that she didn't have another choice. Kindness was her way of surviving pain, her way of holding herself together while juggling responsibilities most people her age never faced. A group of college students waved her over, demanding drink refills while talking over each other. A toddler cried at a nearby table. A couple argued quietly about beach parking, their voices rising with each exchange. The smell of grilled onions and sizzling burger grease mixed with the sharp scent of cleaning spray. The clatter of dishes echoed from the kitchen. Harbor Grill felt like a pressure cooker about to burst, but Maya balanced 3 plates along her arm and made her way to a rowdy table as if the chaos were normal. She placed the plates down carefully, offering a gentle reminder about hot surfaces, then turned to check on another table before the bell over the front door chimed. It was a small sound nearly drowned out by the noise inside, but Maya heard it anyway out of habit. She glanced toward the entrance, expecting more tourists in beach clothes. Instead, her breath caught for half a second. A man stepped through the doorway, wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low, a faded black t-shirt, and a simple backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked like any tired traveler seeking refuge from the heat, but Maya recognized him immediately. Even with most of his face shadowed beneath the cap, there was no mistaking the calm presence, the gentle posture, the familiar mix of humility and quiet strength. Keanu Reeves, standing inside Harbor Grill. Her heart thumped faster, not because she planned to react, but because she desperately hoped no one else would. She had seen celebrities before around Santa Monica, but Keanu was different. He wasn't surrounded by assistants. He wasn't wearing expensive clothes. He wasn't trying to be noticed. In fact, he looked like a man praying he wouldn't be. Maya steadied her breathing and stepped forward. "Welcome," she said with a warm, controlled tone, as if he were any other customer seeking a moment of peace. "I can get you seated." He lifted his gaze slightly, meeting her eyes with a quiet nod of gratitude. His expression was tired, a kind of deep exhaustion that didn't come from heat or travel alone. Maya didn't know what he was carrying, but she sensed enough to understand he needed somewhere calm for a moment. She guided him to the most secluded booth, the one partially shielded from the rest of the tables by a tall plant and a half wall. If he was trying to stay unnoticed, this was his safest option, at least for a moment. Because Harbor Grill was full, and the smallest shift in energy was enough to set off a chain reaction Maya could already feel forming. Maya placed a menu gently on the table in front of him. For a brief moment, the noise of the diner faded, replaced by a quiet understanding in Keanu's eyes. He offered a small, grateful smile, the kind that said more than words. It was the expression of someone who wasn't used to taking up space, someone who preferred blending in whenever possible. "Can I get you something to drink to start?" she asked softly. "Tea," he said, Hot if you have it. Of course, Maya replied, as if the request were perfectly ordinary despite the scorching heat outside. She didn't joke about the temperature or tease him the way some waitstaff might. She simply nodded, understanding that comfort meant something different to everyone. His voice sounded worn, as though he hadn't slept well in days. She wondered briefly what might be weighing on him, but she didn't push the thought further. People came to Harbor Grill for 1,000 reasons. Only a few of those were anyone else's business. Maya turned toward the drink station, weaving through tables crowded with hungry families. The air buzzed with conversation and clinking silverware. She kept her pace steady, refusing to glance back and draw attention to him. If she acted normal, maybe the rest of the diner would too. But peace never lasted long in a place like this. She had just begun to pour the hot water over a packet of green tea when she heard a sharp gasp from somewhere behind her. Then another, followed by a whispered, hurried voice. "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" Maya's hand froze mid-pour. She closed her eyes briefly and exhaled. It was happening already. Within seconds, murmurs rippled across the dining room. Subtle at first, then growing louder as customers craned their necks, trying to get a better look. Maya turned toward the noise and saw 3 teenagers pointing their phones in Keanu's direction. A couple from out of town stood up from their booth. A man at the counter whispered urgently to his wife. Even the cook behind the grill poked his head out the pass-through window. The energy shifted like a spark catching dry grass. Keanu remained seated, trying to shrink into the corner of his booth. He kept his head down, staring at the menu with an intensity that made it obvious he wasn't reading a single word. His shoulders had tightened, his posture stiffened. He looked exactly like someone wishing he were invisible. Maya felt her chest tighten. She knew what was coming. She'd seen this happen before, and it always ended the same way. A celebrity walks in hoping for a quiet moment, and the crowd turns it into a spectacle. But this felt different. Keanu wasn't putting on a charming veneer or basking in the attention. He was enduring it. Maya hurried back toward his table, holding the cup of tea steady, despite the rush of adrenaline sweeping through her. Her steps were purposeful, but not rushed, her face calm, but determined. She approached just as a woman stepped dangerously close to his booth phone in hand. "Excuse me," Maya said, gently positioning herself between the booth and the crowd forming around it. "He's here to eat just like everyone else. Could we please give him a little space?" The woman blinked, surprised by Maya's directness. "But it's Keanu Reeves." "I understand," Maya replied, "but he deserves a peaceful meal." Another customer protested. Someone else mumbled that they only wanted one picture. Phones hovered in the air like a swarm of small mechanical insects. Maya stood her ground, soft but immovable. And in that moment, a quiet line was drawn. A line the crowd didn't like. A line her manager would soon notice. A line that would cost Maya everything. Maya barely had time to steady her breath before the sharp click of heels cut through the noise. Her manager, Brenda Carson, stormed out from the back hallway, her expression already tight with irritation. She took in the scene, the gathered customers, the raised phones, and then her glare locked onto Maya. The anger in her eyes was instant, sharp, and deeply familiar. Brenda stepped forward, voice slicing through the room. "What is happening here, and why are you interfering with customers?" Maya tried to explain, keeping her tone calm, but Brenda didn't listen. She accused her of overstepping, of ruining a valuable moment for the diner. Around them, the restless crowd grew louder. Keanu shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing the situation would vanish. Maya held her ground, insisting he deserved privacy. Brenda's face hardened, and in front of everyone, she made a decision that would change Maya's life forever. Long before the chaos at Harbor Grill and the confrontation that left the entire diner silent, Maya Lopez had been living a life made of quiet endurance. Most people who saw her carrying plates with a practiced smile assumed she was like any other server trying to make ends meet in a busy Los Angeles neighborhood. But beneath her calm exterior lived a set of burdens that weighed heavier than anyone could guess. She woke up every morning at 5, long before the beach crowds arrived, to help her mother with medication breakfast and the careful stretching exercises recommended by her physical therapist. The stroke 2 years earlier had changed everything, leaving her mother unable to work and often unable to walk without assistance. Maya became the primary caretaker overnight, not because she had time or money, but because no one else would. After getting her mother settled each morning, Maya rushed to catch the bus that carried her across town to Harbor Grill. The commute alone was draining, but it gave her a brief sliver of quiet before facing another long shift. She usually arrived early so she could help prep, silverware fill, condiment bottles, and check on the restocking list. She did it not because Brenda asked her to, but because she couldn't stand the feeling of being unprepared. With customers as unpredictable as the Pacific tide, every moment of readiness mattered. Her coworkers admired her discipline, but rarely understood the desperation behind it. Maya needed every hour she could get, every shift she could take. Rent in Santa Monica was unforgiving, medical bills even more so, and her younger brother Mateo had just started at a local community college with dreams of becoming a physical therapist. He asked her not to help with tuition, but Maya insisted. She knew the feeling of doors closing too early in life. She wanted at least one door to stay open for him. Dreams were a luxury Maya couldn't afford, but she kept one tucked quietly in her heart. She wanted to open a small bakery someday, a modest place, filled with warm smells, soft music, and pastries she'd learned to make from her mother when she was little. Baking reminded her of a time when life felt simple, when her mother's laughter filled their apartment, and money wasn't a constant shadow. But every month she pushed that dream further aside. Reality needed her more urgently than her own hopes did. At Harbor Grill, the environment was tense on most days. Brenda Carson, the manager, ran the diner with an iron fist wrapped in a forced smile. She measured success by customer volume and online reviews, not by staff well-being. To her, the workers were replaceable, temporary, and often invisible unless they made a mistake. Maya learned early on to avoid drawing attention, especially when Brenda was in one of her moods. Those moods seemed to come more frequently as the diner grew busier during tourist season. Maya never complained. She watched others quit or clash with Brenda, but she simply lowered her head, stayed polite, and focused on doing her job. She needed the income too much to risk losing it. The unspoken rule was clear smile, no matter what. Smile when a customer yelled. Smile when tips were small. Smile when Brenda scolded someone publicly. Smile even when your heart was breaking. But beneath all that resilience, Maya carried a softness she refused to let the world take from her. That softness, that instinct to protect those who seemed weary or vulnerable, had always been the reason customers trusted her. It was also the reason she didn't hesitate for a second when she noticed Keanu Reeves sitting alone, quietly trying to disappear into the corner booth. She saw exhaustion in his posture. She saw a man who needed just a moment of peace. A moment she tried to give him even if it would cost her everything. Maya's soft heart had always been both her greatest strength and her most dangerous weakness in a place like Harbor Grill. Every shift brought reminders of how easily people took service workers for granted. Customers snapped fingers instead of speaking. Others left messes without apology. Some treated her like she was invisible. But Maya never let bitterness take root. She breathed through the noise, held her patience, and reminded herself that everyone carried burdens she couldn't see. The kindness she gave wasn't based on merit. It was who she was. Still, that didn't mean she didn't feel the weight. There were nights she went home and cried quietly in the bathroom so her mother wouldn't hear. Nights when fear crept in, whispering that she would never escape this cycle of scraping by. Nights when the exhaustion felt so deep she wondered how she could keep going. But then morning came, and with it her mother's small smile, or Mateo's excited chatter about his classes, and she found enough strength to keep trying. Brenda, on the other hand, had none of that softness. She treated the staff like a machine she had to keep running, and Maya like one of its interchangeable gears. Brenda was the type of manager who believed smiling employees meant higher profits, and higher profits meant success. She didn't care how employees felt as long as customers kept spending. She lived by a rigid rule: anything that jeopardized business was unacceptable. And sometimes kindness jeopardized business, especially when it interfered with customers wanting something they shouldn't have. That was why Maya tried so hard to stay invisible. Brenda noticed everything, and her approval was unpredictable. One day she praised Maya's efficiency. The next, she accused her of lacking urgency. No matter how hard Maya worked, she always felt she was one misstep away from losing the only stable income her family had. She learned to anticipate Brenda's routines, her shifting frustrations, even the sound of her footsteps. The quicker she adapted, the safer she felt. Despite it all, Maya found small pockets of connection that made the job bearable. Carol from the morning shift often brought her homemade tamales. Ricky the dishwasher played old love songs on a speaker during cleanup. Even a few regulars asked how her mother was doing. These moments didn't erase the hardships, but they reminded Maya that humanity existed even in hard places. Still, she didn't let anyone get too close. Not because she didn't trust them, but because she felt her life was too heavy to place on someone else's shoulders. She had responsibilities, debts, and dreams that seemed so distant they were almost fragile. She guarded them quietly. She carried them silently. And through everything she clung to the small dream that one day, maybe long into the future, she could open her little bakery. She imagined a warm space with soft lighting and the smell of cinnamon in the air. She imagined her mother sitting at a table near the window, smiling as she watched Maya greet customers. She imagined Mateo stopping by between classes or after work, sitting at the counter and telling her about his life. The dream felt like another world, unreachable yet comforting. But for now, Harbor Grill was her world. And in that world, she kept her head down, followed the rules, and endured the pressure that never seemed to ease. That was what made the moment with Keanu so unusual. Maya didn't step into conflict. She avoided it at all costs. She stayed quiet, polite, and unobtrusive. But when she saw a weary stranger being cornered by flashing phones and demanding voices, her instincts overtook her fear. For once, she didn't stay invisible. For once, she spoke up. And speaking up, though, she didn't yet know it was about to unravel her entire life. What Maya never realized was how long that moment had been building inside her. Years of swallowing frustration, years of smiling through disrespect, years of watching customers treat staff like objects had carved out a quiet resilience. She could endure almost anything when it was directed at her. She had learned to breathe through it, absorb it, and keep moving. But when she saw someone else being overwhelmed, someone who clearly didn't want attention and didn't know how to escape it without being rude, something inside her shifted. Maybe it was because she recognized the same tired posture she carried home every night. Maybe it was because his quiet presence reminded her of her mother, on difficult days fragile, yet determined to hold herself together. Or maybe it was simply because kindness was her reflex, even when it cost her. So when the crowd swarmed around Keanu's booth, and she saw the discomfort tightening his shoulders, she stepped forward without thinking. It wasn't about celebrity, it wasn't about rules, it was about humanity. That instinct, the same one that made her endure so much in silence, finally pushed her to act. And the moment she did, the direction of her life began to change. Maya set the steaming cup of tea on the table with a gentle touch, careful not to disturb the fragile quiet Keanu seemed to cling to. His eyes lifted soft and tired, and he thanked her with a voice so low she barely heard it over the clatter of the diner. There was something fragile in that quiet tone, something that made her pause for a heartbeat before stepping back. He wasn't just tired from travel or heat. This was emotional weariness, the kind that settled deep into a person's bones. She didn't ask questions. She didn't pry. But when she walked away, she couldn't stop wondering what weight he was carrying. As she moved to another table, she overheard two older women whispering about Keanu's recent visits to a local hospital. One of them mentioned seeing a blurry photo online of him entering a private wing. Maya felt her heart dip. If he was here in Santa Monica and visiting hospitals, then someone he cared about must be hurting. Suddenly, his exhaustion made painful sense. This diner wasn't just a place to eat. It was the first quiet corner he'd found in a day full of heaviness. She wished more than anything that he could keep that peace. but peace was a rare luxury in Harbor Grill. Within minutes, the whispering grew louder. Chairs squeaked as customers shifted. Phones were raised again, first subtly, then boldly. Maya felt the shift before she turned to look. A small crowd had begun forming near his booth, not out of malice, but out of excitement, curiosity, and the thrill of seeing someone famous up close. Some approached cautiously. Others stepped forward with the entitlement of people who believed fame erased boundaries. "Excuse me," a teenage boy said, leaning over the booth. "Can I get a quick picture?" Another voice chimed in from behind him. "Keanu, can you sign this napkin for my daughter?" Keanu straightened, offering a polite but exhausted smile. He didn't refuse. He didn't snap. He never did. He simply tried to manage the situation the way he always did, with quiet patience and humility. He took the napkin, signed it, then handed it back. The boy snapped a photo before Keanu could even blink. More people pushed forward. Someone shoved a pen at him before he had time to breathe. Someone else squeezed themselves between tables to get closer. A woman blocked his exit entirely, holding her phone so close it nearly brushed his face. The flashes began bright, intrusive bursts of light, reflecting off silverware and glass. His soup sat untouched. His tea cooled beside him. Maya felt her pulse quicken. She moved back toward the booth, weaving through customers who were now standing in the aisles, ignoring staff instructions to stay clear. It was as if the diner had transformed into a stage and Keanu into a reluctant performer trapped under the spotlight. She arrived just as another customer leaned across the table, invading his space with a forced grin. "Just one selfie," the man demanded. "Come on, you can't say no." Keanu didn't say no, he simply hesitated, a flicker of discomfort tightening his jaw. That was enough for Maya. She stepped forward, calm but firm, positioning herself between the booth and the crowd. Her voice carried not anger, but clarity. "Everyone, please give him some space so he can enjoy his meal." The effect rippled instantly. Some customers stepped back, surprised by her tone. Others rolled their eyes, but complied. A few murmured complaints, but the tension in the air eased slightly. Keanu's shoulders lowered a fraction, enough to show he felt grateful. Maya was prepared to stay there as long as it took, but then the voice she dreaded most cut through the commotion. Brenda had noticed, and she was furious. Brenda marched out from the back hallway with the force of someone who believed every disruption was a personal attack. Her heels struck the floor in sharp, angry beats that made nearby customers turn their heads. Maya didn't need to look to know what expression Brenda wore. She had seen it too many times, usually directed at employees who dared to show the slightest bit of humanity that didn't fit Brenda's idea of acceptable customer service. "What is going on here?" Brenda demanded, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. The crowd parted slightly as she approached, giving her a clear view of Maya standing protectively in front of the booth. Keanu remained seated oddly still, as if he hoped that staying quiet might prevent the situation from escalating. But his silence didn't matter. Brenda had already chosen her target. "Maya." Brenda snapped, "Why are you interfering with paying customers?" Maya kept her voice calm. "I'm asking them to give him space. He hasn't been able to eat." Brenda's eyebrows lifted sharply. "That's not your decision to make. If customers want photos, you let them take photos. Do you understand how good this is for business?" A few onlookers shifted uncomfortably. Even those who wanted pictures sensed the hostility radiating off Brenda. Maya stood straighter, heart pounding but voice steady. "He looked uncomfortable," she said. "He deserves to eat in peace." It was the truth, a simple truth. But Brenda reacted as if Maya had insulted her entire career. "That is not your concern," Brenda hissed. "Your job is to serve food and keep customers happy, not to decide what they can or cannot do." A customer behind Maya interjected. She was just trying to help him. The crowd was getting out of hand. Brenda ignored them completely. Her focus never shifted from Maya. It was as if Keanu, the customers, the chaos, none of it mattered. Only the fact that Maya had dared to take initiative without her approval. Maya swallowed hard, aware that dozens of eyes were on her. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want attention. She just wanted Keanu to have a moment of dignity. But Brenda's anger swelled like a storm ready to break. "I need you to stop," Maya said quietly. Brenda's face flushed. "You don't get to tell me what to do in my restaurant," she said, voice rising. "You don't get to make these judgment calls. You don't get to embarrass us in front of customers." "I wasn't embarrassing anyone," Maya replied. "I was trying to protect someone's privacy. And that, Brenda said, is overstepping. Completely unacceptable." She turned toward the crowd, raising her voice. "If anyone wants a picture, go ahead. We're happy to have you. This is a friendly establishment." More phones immediately rose. The crowd pressed forward again, no longer hesitating. Keanu flinched when another bright flash lit his booth. The momentary peace Maya had created vanished in seconds, swallowed by the noise of people who saw him as entertainment rather than a human being trying to have dinner. Maya stepped forward again. She couldn't help it. Her instincts moved faster than her fear. "Please," she said to the nearest customer, "just give him some space." "He hasn't." Brenda raised her hand sharply. "Enough! You are done giving orders in this diner." The room fell into uneasy silence. Keanu looked up at Maya, his eyes soft with apology, as if he felt responsible for her being caught in the crossfire. Maya shook her head slightly, trying to reassure him, even though dread pooled heavy in her stomach. Brenda inhaled deeply, her expression hardening, and Maya knew something irreversible was coming. Brenda took one decisive step closer, her jaw tight enough to tremble. The diner's chatter faded into an uneasy hush as every nearby customer sensed the shift. Even the kitchen went quiet, the sizzling on the grill suddenly sounding distant. Maya felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her posture steady, refusing to shrink under the weight of Brenda's stare. "You've crossed a line," Brenda said. "And I won't tolerate insubordination." Maya tried once more to diffuse the moment. "I'm only asking for respect, that's all." Brenda shook her head sharply. "You don't get to dictate respect. You follow directions or you leave." She gestured toward the door, her voice cold. "And right now you can leave." A stunned silence fell over the diner. Keanu's eyes widened, full of quiet alarm. Maya stood still, unable to breathe for a moment. She had known this was coming, yet the finality of it struck like a blow. Brenda's voice cut through her thoughts. "You're fired." Gasps broke out across the room. No one spoke. No one moved. Maya finally turned toward the exit, her hands shaking, knowing that everything in her life had just shifted forever. For a long moment, after the words "you're fired" hung in the air, Maya couldn't move. It was as if the world around her had stopped spinning, leaving her suspended between shock and disbelief. The customers stared. The staff stood frozen. Even the crowd that moments earlier had been fighting for selfies now seemed to realize they had witnessed something far heavier than an awkward celebrity encounter. Maya swallowed against the tightening in her throat, trying to steady her breathing. Losing this job meant losing her only stable income. Losing it meant rent might not get paid. Losing it meant her mother's medication, Mateo's tuition, groceries, everything she worked for suddenly hung in uncertainty. But even with terror crawling up her ribs, she didn't back down. Brenda crossed her arms, satisfied, as if firing someone in front of a room full of strangers was a demonstration of authority rather than cruelty. Next time, Brenda said sharply, "Remember your place before you decide to make decisions that aren't yours to make." Maya stood straighter, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I wasn't trying to make decisions. I was trying to protect someone who looked uncomfortable." "That's not your job," Brenda snapped. "It's human decency," Maya replied. A ripple moved through the crowd. A few people nodded subtly. Others glanced nervously between the two women. But before Brenda could strike back, a new voice entered the moment. "I asked her to let me have a quiet meal," Keanu said, rising slowly from his booth. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a kind of grounded calm that drew instant attention. The diner shifted again. Phones lowered. Conversation stopped. The tension changed from chaos to sharp focus. She wasn't overstepping. Keanu continued. She was being respectful and kind. Brenda blinked, startled that the celebrity at the center of the commotion had dared to speak against her, but instead of softening, her expression hardened, as if his support only deepened her irritation. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Reeves," she said tightly, "we're honored to have you here, truly. But my staff knows the rules. They don't decide how customers interact with me." Keanu finished gently. "I'm the customer she was helping." Maya felt heat prick her eyes at his defense, not because he spoke loudly or forcefully, but because he spoke honestly. He didn't elevate her. He didn't dramatize the moment. He simply acknowledged she had done what kindness required. Brenda exhaled sharply. "This isn't about you. This is about her sabotaging a valuable moment for the diner." Maya's eyes widened. "I wasn't sabotaging anything. You were," Brenda insisted, pointing a finger at her. "I saw you telling people what they could and couldn't do." "I was trying to keep the situation from getting out of hand," Maya said. He looked overwhelmed. Brenda rolled her eyes. "Celebrities deal with attention all the time. He'll be fine." Keanu's expression shifted. He didn't raise his voice, but something in his posture changed, a quiet disappointment that carried its own weight. "No one deserves to have their boundaries ignored," he said softly. "Fame doesn't erase that." Again, the diner fell quiet. Even those who had earlier pushed for photos now seemed ashamed. But Brenda refused to relent. "My decision stands," she said, final and cold. "She's done here." The finality of those words closed around Maya like a tightening grip. Her hands trembled, her breath shook, and yet even now she didn't apologize, not for kindness, not for doing what she believed was right. Because if she apologized now, she feared she would lose something far bigger than her job. Maya's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips, but she kept her chin lifted. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the reality set in. She was no longer an employee of Harbor Grill. The diner where she had spent countless hours, where she had swallowed frustration day after day, where she had worked tirelessly to scrape together enough money to keep her family afloat, was now closed to her in an instant. And all of it had happened under the watchful eyes of strangers. For a moment, she wondered if she should try again to defend herself. Maybe if she explained everything calmly, maybe if she softened her tone, maybe if she apologized, Brenda would reconsider. But even as the thoughts flickered, she pushed them away. Apologizing would mean agreeing that she had done something wrong. She hadn't. She knew she hadn't. And even if she said the words, Brenda wasn't the type of person who valued fairness enough to change her mind. The silence in the diner grew heavier. A few customers lowered their gazes, unable to watch the humiliation play out any longer. Others seemed frozen, unsure whether they should intervene or stay quiet. The weight of their sympathy pressed on Maya's chest, making it harder to breathe. Keanu stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on the back of the booth, as if grounding himself before speaking again. "She didn't deserve that," he said quietly. There was no anger in his tone, only honest conviction. "She helped me. And she did it with compassion." Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "This has nothing to do with compassion. This is about professionalism." She shot Maya a look that held no trace of remorse. "And you clearly don't understand it." "I understand it just fine," Maya said, her voice steady despite the shakiness in her limbs. "But I also understand people." And he didn't want the attention. Anyone could see that. Brenda scoffed. "You think because you read his mood you get to dictate the atmosphere of the diner? No, absolutely not. You cost us a chance for publicity." People were excited. They were taking pictures. That could have helped us. Maya stared at her, stunned by the bluntness of it. For Brenda, everything came down to optics, image, and the illusion of a thriving business. The humanity inside the walls of Harbor Grill never mattered as much as the snapshots people carried out of it. "It shouldn't matter if a customer is famous or not," Maya replied. "Everyone deserves a little privacy." "That's not your call," Brenda repeated sharply. "And since you don't seem to understand that, I'll gladly replace you with someone who does." The words struck deep, not because Maya believed them, but because Brenda delivered them with such confidence. As if people like Maya grew on trees. As if loyalty, hard work, and sacrifice could be tossed aside the moment they were inconvenient. Keanu's jaw tightened. She showed more respect than most people here today. Brenda turned toward him with a strained smile. "Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry you were uncomfortable, but we value all our guests. This situation simply got out of hand. It got out of hand because no one protected him," Maya said softly. "And I couldn't ignore that." Brenda snapped toward her. "Get your things and leave!" The finality of the command pushed everything else away. No more defending, no more arguing, no chance to change the outcome. Maya felt something inside her loosen, an anchor, breaking free. She nodded once, even though her throat felt tight enough to close. "All right," she whispered. "I'll go." But the tremble in her chest wasn't just fear. It was heartbreak. It was humiliation. And it was the first flicker of a change she didn't yet understand. Maya walked to the back hallway with unsteady steps, the weight of dozens of eyes trailing her as she retrieved her small locker key. Her hands trembled as she gathered her belongings: a spare apron, a folded sweater, a lunch container she had forgotten to wash. The simplicity of these items made the moment feel even heavier. When she turned around, Keanu stood near the doorway, careful not to intrude, but unable to let her leave without acknowledging what had happened. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "None of this should have happened." Maya shook her head, unable to speak without her voice breaking. She forced a thin smile instead, trying to show that she wasn't angry with him. If anything, she felt guilty that he had been dragged into the chaos of her collapse. As she walked past his booth for the last time, she noticed he had left a tip far larger than anything she'd ever received. Beneath the receipt, a small handwritten note peeked out, but her vision blurred with emotion, and she couldn't bring herself to read it yet. She pushed open the diner door, stepping into the warm evening air, her entire world suddenly uncertain. Maya barely remembered the walk home. Her legs carried her on autopilot through the warm Santa Monica evening, but her mind replayed the moment over and over. Brenda's voice echoing through the diner, the stares, the shame, the feeling of being small and powerless in a room she had worked in for 3 exhausting years. By the time she reached her apartment building, her cheeks were streaked with dried tears she hadn't even noticed falling. Her mother Rosa sat in the living room, sorting medical papers, when Maya pushed the door open. The moment she saw her daughter's face, Rosa struggled upright from the couch, concern tightening her features. Maya tried to speak, but the words never formed. Instead, she collapsed into her mother's arms, sobs shaking her body with a force she couldn't control. Rosa stroked her hair gently, whispering calm reassurances, even though her own voice carried worry she was trying to mask. They sat like that for several minutes before Maya could breathe steadily again. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her uniform, realizing she hadn't even taken it off. She still smelled like coffee and fryer oil. It made her chest tighten with humiliation. "What happened, my girl?" her mother asked quietly. Maya swallowed hard. "I got fired." The words felt unreal, heavy, too large for her mouth. Her mother's expression felt sadness pooling in her eyes. She reached for Maya's hands, squeezing them tightly. "Tell me what happened." Maya explained everything from Keanu Reeves walking in to the moment Brenda pointed toward the door. She kept her voice calm, but her mother winced at each detail. When she described how Brenda had accused her of sabotaging the diner, her mother clicked her tongue in disbelief. "I'm proud of you," Rosa said firmly when she finished. "You stood up for someone who needed help. That is never wrong." Maya wanted to believe that, but in the dim apartment with unpaid bills stacked on the counter, it was hard to see the good. She stared at the floor as guilt pressed against her ribs. "I can't lose this job," she said after a long silence. "We're already behind on bills. Rent is due in 8 days. I don't know what we're going to do." Her mother took a slow breath. "We will figure it out." "We always do." But Maya heard the worry behind the words. The apartment already felt smaller, the future darker. Later that evening, after helping her mother settle into bed, Maya sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. The glow of the screen illuminated her tired face as she scrolled through job listings. Hostess wanted, must work late nights, barista position, 2 years experience required, part-time cashier, weekends only. Each listing felt like another reminder that thousands of people in Los Angeles were applying for the same underpaid roles she desperately needed. After 30 minutes, she closed the laptop, her breath trembling. Tears welled again, hot and uninvited. She pressed the heel of her palms to her eyes, embarrassed by how quickly her hope had crumbled. Her phone buzzed. It was her younger brother, Mateo. "Everything okay? You seem quiet today." Maya stared at the screen. She typed back, "Just tired. Everything's fine." She hit send, swallowing the truth like a stone. The apartment grew quiet as the night deepened, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator and the dull buzz of a streetlight flickering outside. Maya sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the blank laptop screen she couldn't bring herself to reopen. A heaviness settled in her chest, not just fear, but exhaustion. The kind that lingered after carrying too many burdens for too long. She rubbed her temples, trying to push away the dull ache forming behind her eyes. The meltdown at the diner looped in her mind as if someone kept pressing replay. She saw Brenda's angry face. She heard the customers whispering. She even recalled the pity in one woman's eyes, a stranger who had watched the scene unfold like a spectacle. Her jaw tightened. She didn't want pity. She wanted dignity, stability, a chance to breathe. After a few minutes, she rose from the table and walked to the small dresser beside her bed. Her hands still felt shaky as she opened the drawer where she kept anything personal. A small shell Mateo found for her when he was little. Her mother's lucky rosary, a folded concert ticket from a local band she'd once dreamed of seeing again. And now, tucked between those mementos, she placed the tip envelope Keanu left behind. She hadn't opened it earlier. She hadn't been ready. Her mind had been too clouded with anger, shame, and fear. But now, in the quiet of the apartment, she slowly peeled open the flap. Inside was a standard diner receipt, and underneath it lay a handwritten note on a small torn piece of paper. The handwriting was simple, steady, unpolished. It felt like something someone wrote because they meant it, not because they wanted it remembered. "Thank you for your kindness today. You deserved better. Keanu." Maya's breath hitched, not because it was from a celebrity, but because it was genuine. Gentle, soft-spoken in written form, just like his voice had been at the diner. He didn't write about fame or attention or the chaos. He wrote about her. She closed her eyes and let the words sit with her, offering the smallest spark of comfort in her otherwise unraveling day. It wasn't a solution, but it eased the sting of what had happened. Someone had seen her. Someone had understood. She tucked the note back into the drawer, smoothing it flat with her fingers before closing it again. She didn't expect anything more to come from it. Life didn't hand her miracles. Life handed her shifts, bills, and obligations. Still, a tiny corner of her heart felt less alone. When she turned off the lamp and climbed into bed, the exhaustion of the day finally pressed down on her fully. Her eyes stayed open in the dark, her thoughts drifting between fear and faint hope. She wondered how long it would take to find another job. She wondered how to stretch her remaining savings. She wondered how to protect her mother from more stress. She didn't know that across the city, Keanu Reeves lay awake too, replaying the moment she stood between him and an overwhelmed crowd. A moment of courage he couldn't forget. Across Los Angeles, in a quiet hotel room overlooking Wilshire Boulevard. Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, elbows resting on his knees. The city lights flickered against the windows, casting shifting patterns across the floor. He had tried to unwind, tried to focus on the reason he was in town, but his mind kept circling back to the harbor grill and the look on Maya's face when she was fired. He exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand across his tired eyes. He had seen plenty of chaos in public places before. Fame brought interruptions, unwanted attention, uncomfortable moments. But today felt different. Today, someone had stepped in, not because he was famous, but because he was human. and she had paid a price for it. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Her steady voice echoed in his memory, the way she stood between him and the crowd without aggression or attitude, the sincerity in her eyes. He felt a heaviness in his chest thinking about her walking out of the diner alone, unsure of what came next. A soft knock on the adjoining room's door interrupted his thoughts. It was his longtime friend and assistant Michael Torres checking in after spending the day handling hospital paperwork. When Keanu told him what happened, Michael's expression tightened. "She lost her entire job because she tried to help you." Keanu nodded, feeling the weight of it again. "That's not right," Michael said. "You can't fix the whole world, but maybe you can fix this." Keanu didn't respond at first. He wasn't the type to swoop into someone's life uninvited, but the injustice gnawed at him. Maya hadn't chased attention. She hadn't tried to use him. She had simply protected a stranger. He reached for the small notepad on the nightstand, the same one he always carried for thoughts and reminders. He scribbled a few words, then crossed them out, then wrote again. It still didn't feel like enough. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he would figure out how to reach her. Not out of guilt, but because doing nothing didn't sit right with him. Because kindness deserved something in return. Because a young woman with tired eyes and steady courage had stood up for him when she didn't have to. And he wasn't going to forget that. The morning sunlight crept through the thin curtains in Maya's bedroom, soft and warm, but she didn't feel any of it. She lay awake long before her alarm, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the diner over and over again. Even after a restless night, the shock sat heavy in her chest, refusing to fade. She had never been fired from anything in her life. She had never even been written up. The humiliation still pulsed through her like a bruise. Her mother slept peacefully in the next room, unaware of how drastically everything had changed. Maya watched the clock tick forward each passing minute, tightening the knot of worry in her stomach. Rent was due in 8 days. Her mother's medication refill was coming up soon. Mateo's textbooks still needed to be paid for. She counted everything again in her head, hoping the numbers would magically rearrange into something manageable. They didn't. She dragged herself out of bed and walked to the kitchen, moving slowly as if her body resisted the reality waiting for her. The kettle hissed as she heated water, but even the familiar routine couldn't settle her nerves. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the steam rise against her face, but her thoughts were too loud. She hadn't told Mateo. She hadn't told her mother. She hadn't told anyone except the blank job application portals glowing on her laptop screen, and even those felt like reminders of everything she had lost. In the stillness of the apartment, the silence felt suffocating. Then came the knock. Sharp, firm, unexpected. Maya stiffened. It was too early for a neighbor, too late for a delivery. Her heart lurched with sudden panic. She set the mug down and walked cautiously toward the door, her steps light on the worn hardwood floor. She hesitated a moment with her hand on the lock, quietly peering through the peephole. A man stood outside, early 40s, neatly dressed, posture straight, expression calm and professional. He carried a slim envelope in his hand. She cracked the door open just an inch. "Can I help you?" He offered a polite nod. "Good morning. Are you—" "Maya Lopez." Her breath caught. "Yes." "I'm David Nakamura," he said gently. "I work as an assistant to Mr. Keanu Reeves. He asked me to deliver something to you personally." For a moment, Maya forgot how to speak. She blinked at him, wondering if she was still half dreaming. I don't understand." David's expression softened, as if he sensed the fragile ground she stood on. "Mr. Reeves wanted to make sure this reached you safely." He extended the envelope toward her with careful respect, no rush in his movements. "He said you would know why." Maya stared at it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted it, the paper heavier than it appeared. She swallowed hard, feeling a swirl of emotions she couldn't yet name. Confusion, fear, hope, all tangled into one. David nodded again. "If you need anything clarified, my number is inside. Please don't hesitate to reach out." She nodded silently, unable to trust her voice, as he stepped back toward the hallway. When the door clicked shut behind her, she leaned against it for a long moment, pressing the envelope to her chest. Her heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears. Something was inside this envelope that could change everything. She didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. Finally, she drew in a shaky breath and opened it. The envelope opened with a slow tear, the sound impossibly loud in the stillness of the kitchen. Maya slid the contents onto the table, her breath catching when she saw the pale blue check beneath a folded letter. She lifted it with trembling fingers. $10,000. The number stared back at her, almost surreal, almost impossible. Her knees weakened, and she pulled out a chair, sinking into it before her legs gave out completely. She turned the check over as if expecting a catch, but it was real. Plain, clean, absolutely real. For a moment, the world felt too big, as if everything she understood about life had tilted. She forced herself to set it down and unfold the letter. The handwriting was the same gentle style she remembered from the note at the diner, steady and honest. Maya, I learned what happened after I left the Harbor Grill. I'm deeply sorry you lost your job because of what you did to help me. You didn't deserve that. You showed kindness when you had nothing to gain from it, and you stood up for someone you thought needed support. That is rare. That is important. This check is not charity. It is meant to give you room to breathe while you decide your next steps. No one thinks clearly when they're choosing between rent and food. If you ever want a workplace where kindness is valued, not punished, the Harbor Hope Cafe is expecting your call. They are a non-profit I've supported quietly for several years. The manager, Elena Ruiz, knows your name. She would welcome you if you decide it feels right for you. Whatever you choose, please know that your courage meant something to me and to others who saw it. Thank you, Keanu. Maya lowered the letter slowly, her eyes already burning before the tears fully formed. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth, trying to steady the sob rising in her throat. $10,000, a job lead, a message full of respect at a time when she felt stripped of all dignity. She couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to her that way. Not as a server, not as someone replaceable, but as a person. Her chest tightened, and the first sob escaped. Then another. She covered her face with both hands as wave after wave of emotion rolled through her. She cried for the humiliation she felt yesterday. She cried for the fear that had sat in her stomach all night. But most of all, she cried because someone had shown her kindness when she expected nothing but indifference. A soft sound stirred behind her. Mija. Her mother called from the hallway, her voice thick with sleep. Maya wiped her face quickly, standing up as her mother shuffled into the kitchen, wearing her favorite worn robe. Concern immediately clouded her features. What happened? Her mother whispered. Maya hesitated only a moment before holding out the letter, her voice shaking. Mama, this came for me. Her mother read in silence, her hand lifting once to adjust her glasses. When she reached the end, she brought a trembling hand to her chest. Her eyes glistened. Oh, Maya, she said softly. Goodness comes back around. It always does. Maya's mother placed the letter gently on the table, then wrapped her arms around her daughter with a steadiness that seemed to hold the entire room together. Maya buried her face in her mother's shoulder, letting the last of her tears fall freely. For the first time since the chaos at the diner, the ache in her chest loosened just enough for her to breathe. Her mother stroked her hair slowly. This world can be cruel, but there are still people who see the truth. Yesterday felt like a door closing. Maybe today is a different door opening. Maya nodded, though her thoughts were still tangled. The check, the letter, the job opportunity. It was overwhelming. None of it felt real yet. She pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. What if it's too much? What if I don't deserve this? Her mother cupped her face. You deserved kindness long before it showed up. Don't question that. The words settled into Maya like warm sunlight. She looked again at the business card David had tucked into the envelope. Harbor Hope Cafe. a nonprofit place she'd heard of but never visited, known for hiring people rebuilding their lives, known for treating staff with dignity. It sounded like a world completely different from Brenda's diner. As she traced the embossed lettering on the card, her mother squeezed her hand. "Call them when you're ready. No pressure. Just remember that someone saw your heart. That means something." Maya inhaled slowly, grounding herself. The fear wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled every part of her. Something steadier took its place. Something close to hope. Across the city, Keanu Reeves checked his phone more often than usual, wondering if Maya Lopez had read his letter yet. Something told him her story wasn't finished. The card lay on the table long after Maya's mother returned to her room to rest. The embossed letters shimmered softly in the morning light as if urging her forward. Harbor Hope Cafe. Even the name felt like a gentle hand reaching out to steady her. She wasn't sure she was ready, but the fear of waiting felt heavier than the fear of trying. After several deep breaths, she picked up her phone and typed in the number. The call connected quickly. "Harbor Hope Cafe. This is Elena speaking." Maya froze for a moment before forcing her voice to steady. "Hi, my name is Maya Lopez. I was told you might be expecting my call." There was a warm chuckle on the other end, the kind that immediately eased tension without effort. Maya. Yes, I've been waiting for you. Do you have time to stop by this afternoon?" Maya blinked. "This afternoon? Yes, I can. Of course. Wonderful. I'll see you at 3. The call ended before Maya had the chance to overthink her answer, which might have been exactly what she needed. She dressed carefully, choosing clothing that made her feel put together without pretending she wasn't still bruised from yesterday's events. On the bus ride across town, she clutched her bag tightly, her stomach flipping with nervous anticipation. Harbor Hope Cafe sat on a quiet corner in West Los Angeles, its storefront framed by potted flowers and murals painted by local youth. The moment Maya stepped inside, she felt something shift within her. The air smelled of fresh bread, warm spices, and roasting beans. But underneath it all was something deeper. Purpose, community, hope, just like the name promised. The cafe was full, but not chaotic. People chatted gently, a soft hum of conversation, instead of the sharp noise she had grown used to at the diner. A small chalkboard near the counter read, "Every purchase supports job training for young adults rebuilding their lives." A group of teenagers laughed as they wiped tables, supervised by a smiling barista who encouraged them with patience instead of scolding them for mistakes. This wasn't just a cafe, it was a lifeline for people trying to start over. "Are you Maya?" She turned to see a woman in her late 40s with warm brown eyes, short, salt and pepper hair, and a posture that radiated calm confidence. This had to be Elena Ruiz. She extended her hand, and her grip was steady grounding. "Thank you for coming," Elena said. "Let's sit somewhere quieter." They moved to a corner booth near a window overlooking the street. Sunlight spilled across the table, making everything feel a little softer. Elena studied her with kind attention, not rushing the moment. "I want you to know something from the start," Elena said gently. "You're not here because someone pulled strings. You're here because someone saw something in you worth investing in." Maya swallowed. "I don't know what he told you." "Keanu doesn't talk about himself," Elena replied with a soft smile. "He talks about people, and he talked about you." Maya's breath caught. "He said you protected him when you had nothing to gain, that you showed courage and kindness in a moment when others chose convenience. We need people like that here, people who see others as human first." Maya felt her eyes sting again, but this time not from fear, not from loss, from possibility. Elena folded her hands on the table, her expression thoughtful. "Let me tell you a little about Harbor Hope. We were founded almost 10 years ago as a job training program for youth who aged out of foster care or experienced homelessness. Most of our staff come to us with little experience and a lot of life on their shoulders. We give them structure support and the chance to discover what they're capable of." As she spoke, Maya took in the cafe with fresh eyes. She noticed the small encouragement notes taped to the pastry case. She noticed the bulletin board near the door filled with photos of smiling young adults who had graduated the program and gone on to full-time jobs in hotels, restaurants, offices, and even universities. She noticed how every detail of the cafe felt intentional, not perfect, but deeply human. Elena continued, "We run on donations, grants, and a handful of private sponsors. One of them, as you know, is Keanu." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing each word. "He doesn't want his name on anything," Elena said. "No plaques, no announcements. He visits quietly, usually sits in the back, and asks about the staff before he asks about himself. He doesn't look for praise. He looks for ways to help." Maya let out a shaky breath, overwhelmed all over again. "I had no idea." "He didn't want you to," Elena replied. "He wanted you to come here because you deserve the chance, not because of who recommended you." Maya looked down at her hands. For so long she had fought to make herself small, to avoid causing trouble, to survive without drawing attention. Yet here she was, being seen by people who valued qualities she thought went unnoticed. Elena leaned forward slightly. "I reviewed your background. You've held steady jobs, you've taken care of your family, you've managed difficult environments without letting bitterness define you. That isn't easy, Maya. That's resilience. And that's something we want in our team." Warmth spread across Maya's chest, the kind that startled her because she had grown accustomed to bracing for disappointment. "What position are you hiring for?" she asked softly. Elena smiled. "Several, actually. But after speaking with Keanu, I think you would be ideal for a community coordinator role." Maya blinked. "I'm not sure I understand. I've only ever worked as a server." "That's exactly why I think you'll be perfect," Elena said. "You've worked with people under pressure. You've managed conflict on the spot. You've built trust with strangers every day. And according to Keanu, you have a remarkable instinct for reading a room and understanding what people need before they say it." Elena reached into a folder and slid a description across the table. "A community coordinator helps guide the young adults we train. You'd check in with them, help them set goals, make sure they feel supported, and assist with cafe operations. It pays better than a standard service job, and more importantly, it gives you room to grow." The words struck her somewhere deep, a job that relied not on speed or compliance, but on compassion and insight. "Do you think I could do that?" Maya asked, her voice trembling slightly. Elena nodded without hesitation. "I know you can." A long silence followed as Maya felt the weight of the moment settle around her. The anxiety that had crushed her last night felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window and let fresh air rush in. "One more thing," Elena added. "We believe in second chances here, but we also believe in first chances, and I think this might be yours." Maya's throat tightened, not from fear, but from recognition. A door was opening, and for the first time in a very long while, she felt ready to walk through it. Elena stood extending her hand with a warm smile. "If you'd like the job, it's yours. We can start training as early as tomorrow." The words settled over Maya like a soft blanket, comforting and unreal all at once. She felt a sudden rush of emotion, the kind that tightened her throat and made her chest feel too small for the hope swelling inside it. After everything that had gone wrong, after the humiliation and fear someone was offering her, not just employment, but trust. "Yes," Maya whispered. "I'd like that very much." Elena's smile widened. "Welcome to Harbor Hope." As they walked through the cafe together, Elena introduced her to the young staff members, each one greeting her with genuine warmth. There were no forced smiles, no tension, no sharp whispers from a manager waiting to pounce on mistakes. Only community, only the sense that people mattered here. By the time Maya stepped back outside into the late afternoon sun, she felt lighter than she had in months. Her future no longer looked like a narrow hallway of deadlines and fear. It felt wider now, filled with possibility. And she had no idea that this new beginning would lead her somewhere far beyond a single cafe. Maya arrived at Harbor Hope the next morning feeling a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. The cafe buzzed softly with morning energy. Volunteers sliced fruit in the kitchen. A group of teens arranged pastries, laughing as they tried to stack them neatly. The warm, lived-in rhythm of the place wrapped around her, like a welcome she didn't realize she had been craving. Elena waved her over with a clipboard in hand. "Your first day," she said with a smile. "Don't worry, you're going to be great." Most of the morning was spent shadowing staff members. She learned the flow of the cafe, but more importantly, she learned the stories of the young adults working there. Many were barely younger than she was. Some had aged out of foster care. Others had lived in their cars before finding Harbor Hope. All carried resilience in their eyes, even when they didn't realize it themselves. Around noon, Elena pulled Maya aside and introduced her to a small group preparing for a life skills session. "This is Maya," Elena said. "She'll be helping with writing support." Maya blinked. "Writing support?" A young woman named Lila lifted her hand shyly. "We're working on resumes and short bios today," she explained. "Most of us haven't written one before." Maya nodded, her heart pinching. She remembered trying to write her first resume at 17 on an old computer that kept shutting down. She remembered the feeling of not knowing where to begin. "All right," Maya said gently. "Let's start together." What happened next surprised her. She sat beside them, helping one student at a time, asking questions about their strengths, their dreams, their hidden skills. As they answered, she found herself weaving their responses into small, carefully crafted paragraphs that reflected who they were. When someone struggled to articulate their story, she helped them phrase it in ways that felt honest and dignified. Her voice softened when she sensed their hesitation, and she encouraged them to write, even when their hands shook with uncertainty. Her patience, her calm explanations, her way of drawing out the best in people, these traits came so naturally that she didn't even realize she was doing something remarkable. An older volunteer, Marcus, lingered nearby, listening as she helped a teen describe his volunteer work. When the session ended, he approached her. "You've done this before?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "No, I just tried to help." Marcus smiled. "You have a gift. Storytelling isn't about fancy words, it's about seeing people and helping them see themselves. You did that today." The compliment warmed her, but she brushed it aside politely, still unsure she deserved it. Later that afternoon, Marcus found her again, this time with a different request. "We're applying for a new grant next month," he said. "Would you consider helping us shape some of the narratives? Your voice could make our proposal stand out." Maya stared at him, startled. "Me? I'm not a writer." Marcus lifted an eyebrow. "After what I heard today, you're absolutely a writer." She wasn't sure how to respond. For so long she had lived in survival mode. Dreams felt like luxuries for other people. But something in his tone made her wonder if she had underestimated herself all these years. Harbor Hope wasn't just giving her a job. It was giving her back a voice she didn't know she had lost. Over the next few weeks, Maya's responsibilities grew in a way that felt natural rather than overwhelming. She continued her daily tasks in the cafe, but she also found herself spending more time in the small office where Harbor Hope kept its computers. Teens came in for help with essays, job applications, scholarship prompts, even small, creative assignments for local workshops. Each time, Maya sat beside them, gently guiding their hands across the keyboard, helping them turn raw thoughts into clear, confident sentences. She never rushed them. She listened carefully. When they doubted themselves, she reminded them of what they had already survived. When they stumbled over a phrase, she encouraged them to keep going rather than erase everything. Her steady presence became something the youth relied on, even if they didn't say it aloud. One afternoon, while she was helping a young man named Theo write a short personal essay, Marcus walked in with a newsletter draft. "We feature a reflection piece every month," he said, handing her the page. "Would you like to contribute something? Maybe about why you decided to work here?" Maya laughed softly. "I don't think anyone wants to read about me." "That's where you're wrong," Marcus said. "People connect with honesty. I've seen you connect with everyone who walks through this place." She hesitated, but later that night, after her mother fell asleep, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She told herself she would write for 5 minutes. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became an hour. Words poured out of her in a way she hadn't expected. She wrote about dignity, about second chances, about how human beings weren't disposable just because life had made them tired. She wrote about harbor hope, as if describing sunlight breaking through a window in a room she never realized had been dark. When she sent the piece to Marcus, she felt a sudden shock of vulnerability, as if she had opened a door too wide. 2 days later, the newsletter was published online. By evening, the cafe staff were buzzing with excitement. "Maya, did you see the comments?" Lila shouted. "People are sharing it everywhere." Her reflection had gone viral across local community pages. Teachers were sharing it with students. Counselors were forwarding it to families. Volunteers she had never met approached her in tears, thanking her for putting into words what they had always felt about the cafe. Maya stood in the center of Harbor Hope, overwhelmed. She had spent years believing she had nothing special to offer, yet here she was being told she helped people feel seen. Later that week, a nonprofit journal reached out asking her to write a full article for their next issue. For the first time in her adult life, Maya didn't doubt herself. She simply said yes. The late evening rush at Harbor Hope Cafe was always gentler than the mornings. The lights dimmed to a warm glow, conversation softened, and the smell of freshly baked bread lingered in the air long after the ovens cooled. Maya moved through the cafe with a calm she had never known in her previous job. Each night as she closed out her tasks, she felt a sense of purpose settle inside her, something sturdy and steady. On this particular evening, the door opened with a soft chime, and Maya glanced up to greet the incoming guest. He walked in quietly, almost unnoticed, a man in his mid-50s, with salt and silver hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and deep-set eyes that watched the room with an observant stillness. His clothes were simple, casual, but intentional. There was nothing flashy about him yet. Something about his presence made people instinctively make space for him. Maya approached with her usual warm smile. "Hi there, you can sit anywhere you like." The man nodded and chose a small table near the back window where the glow of a street lamp filtered through the glass. He studied the menu briefly, then set it down with a thoughtful expression. When Maya returned with water, he offered a small smile. "This place has a very unique energy," he said. "Peaceful, purposeful. You can feel it the moment you walk in." "Thank you," Maya replied, touched. "We try our best to create that." He raised an eyebrow. Maya sat the water down. "Everyone here contributes. The staff, the volunteers, the young people we train. It's a community." The man nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had long suspected. "I can see that. Most cafes feel transactional. This one feels like people are being restored." It was an unusual statement, but it resonated deeply. "That's exactly what Harbor Hope tries to do," Maya said. "Give people a chance to rebuild." The man seemed genuinely intrigued. "And how did you come to work here?" Maya hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but something about his calm curiosity made honesty feel safe. "I was fired from my last job," she said quietly, "but that led me here. Turned out to be the best thing that could have happened." He listened without interruption, his expression compassionate, not probing. When she finished, he leaned back slightly. "You speak with a lot of clarity," he said. "Most people recount events. You understand them." The compliment caught her off guard. "I don't always feel that way." "Maybe not," he replied, "but it's there." He ordered a simple meal, and Maya brought it promptly, expecting him to eat in silence, like many guests did at this hour. Instead, he asked questions, real questions about the cafe, the youth programs, the training workshops, the small victories the staff celebrated behind the scenes. Maya answered each one honestly, sometimes passionately, sometimes shyly, but always from the heart. Their conversation stretched past 30 minutes, then 40. She noticed he never once glanced at his phone. He was fully present, fully listening, as if the world outside this cafe could wait. When he finished his meal, he folded his napkin neatly and looked at her with a gentle seriousness. "Maya, may I ask your last name, Lopez?" she said. He nodded, repeating it to himself lightly. "I'm Elliot Granger." The name meant nothing to her at first, until she saw the flicker of recognition from one of the volunteers across the room, and then it hit her like a delayed echo. Elliot Granger. The Elliot Granger. The reclusive screenwriter whose films won awards not because they were loud or dramatic, but because they pierced straight to the human heart. The man who disappeared between projects, rarely giving interviews, known for slipping into small cafes to observe stories in the real world. And he was sitting here, talking to her. Before Maya could fully process who he was, Elliot reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, matte black business card. He placed it gently on the table between them. "If you ever write," he said, "send me something. Anything. Your insight is rare." Maya stared at the card, stunned into stillness. The embossed name glinted faintly under the warm cafe lights. Elliot Granger, screenwriter. His personal email handwritten beneath the printed text made the gesture feel even more intimate. She swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. "I don't write," she said quietly. Elliot tilted his head. "Are you sure about that?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She thought of the resume sessions, the essays, the way the youth's faces softened when she helped them find words for feelings they thought were unimportant. She thought of her newsletter reflection, the one that had unexpectedly gone viral. "I just help people tell their stories," she said. "That's writing," Elliot replied gently. "And you do it well." Her heart thudded in her chest. "But I've never written anything creative, not like scripts or novels." "That can be learned," he said. "What can't be taught is the way you listen, the way you see people. Stories aren't built on plot, they're built on truth. And you understand truth." His voice carried no pressure, only sincerity. He rose from his seat, placing a small tip under his empty glass before slipping his shoulder bag on. As he headed toward the door, he paused and looked back at her. "Don't underestimate yourself, Maya Lopez. The world needs voices like yours." Then he slipped out into the evening, disappearing into the quiet glow of the streetlights. Maya stood frozen beside the table long after he left the business card, still warm from his hand, resting in her palm. Her breath felt too shallow, as if her body needed time to adjust to a possibility she had never dared imagine. She whispered the words aloud, as if saying them made them more real. "If you ever write, send me something." For the first time in her life, writing didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt like an invitation, a door she had never noticed before. A door that was suddenly unmistakably open. The morning after Elliot Granger's visit, Maya woke earlier than usual. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the business card resting on her nightstand, like a quiet reminder that something in her life had shifted. She couldn't explain the feeling except to say that her world no longer felt small. It no longer felt pre-written. It felt open. When she arrived at Harbor Hope that day, Elena noticed the thoughtful expression on her face. "You look like someone carrying a secret," Elena said. Maya laughed softly. "Maybe I am." Throughout the morning, while helping prep pastries and organizing the outreach bulletin board, Maya replayed Elliot's words in her head. "If you ever write, send me something. The world needs voices like yours." She had tried brushing them aside, telling herself he was just being polite, but they echoed too clearly, too sincerely to ignore. During her lunch break, she sat outside on the small wooden bench behind the cafe. The sounds of traffic faded under the warm breeze, giving her a moment of stillness. She opened her notebook, the same one she used for scheduling shifts and jotting down reminders. For a long moment, her pen hovered above the blank page. It felt impossible that something she wrote could matter beyond these walls. But then she thought of the youth she had helped, the ones who had cried when they told their stories, the ones who didn't believe their lives contained anything worth sharing until she helped them find the words. Maybe she thought writing wasn't about being perfect. Maybe it was about telling the truth. Elena stepped outside unexpectedly, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Maya and sat beside her. "Marcus told me something," she began. "He said you might be considering writing another reflection." Maya's cheeks warmed. "I wasn't sure it was a good idea." "I think it's an excellent idea," Elena said. "You've seen things most people overlook. You felt things deeply and honestly." That's what resonates. Maya looked down at her notebook. I don't even know where to start. Write about what you see, Elena said. Write about what you lived. And if you're willing, write about kindness, the kind most people don't notice. The phrase settled into her like a seed finding soil. Kindness we don't see. That evening after her shift, Maya returned home and sat at her kitchen table. Her mother watched from the living room with soft curiosity as Maya opened her laptop. The screen glowed gently, illuminating her thoughtful expression. She began typing. The words flowed slower than they had for her previous reflection, but each one felt deliberate. She wrote about the moment she stood between Keanu and the crowd. She didn't name him. She didn't describe him as a celebrity. She described him as a human being trying to eat in peace. She wrote about boundaries, compassion, pressure, and dignity. She wrote about how that moment changed her life, not because she lost something, but because it led her somewhere she was meant to be. She titled the piece, "The Kindness We Don't See." When she finished, she sent it to Elena with trembling hands. Elena responded within an hour. "This is beautiful," she wrote. "May I share it in our newsletter and community channels?" Maya hesitated only a moment before agreeing. She trusted Elena. She trusted the cafe. If her words could help someone feel less alone, then maybe they were worth sharing. By the next morning, the piece had already spread farther than she expected. Volunteers approached her with warm smiles. Lila hugged her tightly, saying the article made her cry in the best way. Even Theo, usually reserved, thanked her for writing something that made him feel seen. Their reactions humbled her. She had written from her heart, not expecting anything in return, and yet here it was creating ripples all around her. Later that afternoon, while she wiped down a counter between the lunch and dinner rush, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it until she remembered Elliot Granger's card tucked safely in her apron pocket. She answered quietly. "Hello, Maya." The voice was unmistakable, calm, warm, steady. "This is Elliot." Her breath caught. "Hi." "I didn't expect I read your piece," he said, cutting gently through her surprise. "I read it 3 times. You're not just a good writer. You're a necessary writer." Maya leaned against the counter, dizzy with disbelief. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider something for me," Elliot replied. "I'm working on a project, a short film. I want it rooted in real stories, authentic voices. And you're the only person I've found who captures dignity without pity and hope without pretending everything is perfect." Her heart beat so hard she thought he might hear it through the phone. "You want me to write something?" "Develop a concept with me," he clarified. "Based on your experiences here, based on what you've seen, based on what you feel. You won't be alone. I'll guide you, but I want your voice in this. It deserves a larger space." "I'm not a filmmaker," she whispered. "You're a storyteller," he replied. "Filmmaking is just storytelling through another door." Maya closed her eyes, overwhelmed by emotion. She thought of all the years she had silenced her own dreams because survival didn't leave room for anything else. She thought of her mother's sacrifices, of her brother's hopes, of the quiet fear that she might never rise beyond the invisible ceiling poverty placed over her life. For the first time, she felt that ceiling crack. "I'll try," she finally said, her voice trembling. "That's all I ask," Elliot replied. "We'll take it one step at a time." When the call ended, Maya stood motionless for several seconds. Then she pressed her hand to her mouth, letting the shock settle into something warmer, something steadier. She wasn't imagining a new life anymore. She was stepping into one. And with that single yes, the path ahead, once narrow and uncertain, began to open wide, shaped not by fear, but by possibility. The following weeks unfolded with a rhythm Maya had never experienced before. Each day felt like 2 different worlds woven together. In the mornings, she worked her usual shifts at Harbor Hope, serving coffee, guiding teens through applications, laughing with volunteers, and grounding herself in the community that had become her second home. In the afternoons or evenings, she met with Elliot Granger, stepping into a universe she had only ever seen from the outside. Their first meeting took place in a quiet corner of the cafe. Elliot arrived with a stack of notepads, a laptop, and a gentle smile, ready to begin. Maya felt nervous, unsure of how to contribute, but Elliot quickly eased the tension. He asked her questions not about film structure or industry jargon, but about what she saw every day, about humanity, about resilience, about what people looked like when life gave them a rare moment of kindness. Her answers came slowly at first. Then, as the conversations continued, she felt something loosen inside her. She began talking freely with the same openness she used when helping teens uncover their stories. Elliot listened closely, jotting down thoughts, shaping ideas, and encouraging her to follow the paths her instincts created. One day, as they discussed a scene about a young woman who had aged out of foster care, Maya hesitated. "I don't know if this works," she murmured, tapping the edge of her notebook. Elliot studied her carefully. "Why do you think that?" "Because it's too honest," she said. "Too raw. People might not want to see the reality." Elliot shook his head gently. "People need honesty. Rawness is where truth lives. Trust your voice, Maya." Something in her chest softened. She breathed deeply and kept writing. By their third week, their conversations had evolved into formal brainstorming sessions. They mapped out characters, inspired by real individuals from Harbor Hope. They discussed themes of dignity, compassion, second chances, and the quiet power of community. Elliot guided her, patiently teaching her how to shape emotional beats, how to structure scenes, how to transition between moments without losing the heart of the story. But he never overshadowed her. He never imposed his voice over hers. Instead, he encouraged her to step more fully into her own. "You have a way of seeing people," he said one afternoon as they walked through the cafe together. "Not the surface, the truth underneath. That's what stories need. The idea that she's someone who had once felt invisible, could write stories seen by others, felt strange and overwhelming." But Elliot treated her perspective with a respect she had never been offered before. Eventually, they completed their first full treatment, a 10-page document outlining the structure scenes and emotional arc of their short film. They reread it together in silence. Then Elliot leaned back with a satisfied smile. "This is strong," he said. "This is meaningful. It reflects everything Harbor Hope stands for." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. "Do you really think people will care?" "I know they will," he replied. "Now let's show it to a few people who can help bring it to life." He sent the treatment to 3 producers he trusted, all known for supporting authentic indie projects. Maya didn't sleep that night, her mind racing with fear, hope, and disbelief. She had stepped into a new world, but she still had no idea how quickly that world was about to open for her. The responses came faster than Maya expected. By the next afternoon, Elliot forwarded her 3 separate emails from producers who had read the treatment. Each message carried the same tone of surprise and admiration. They praised the emotional clarity, the honesty, the grounded humanity woven through every page. They asked to meet her. They wanted to know who she was. They wanted to know how she had developed such a compassionate lens. Maya stared at the messages, hardly able to believe they were real. She typed and deleted half a dozen replies before Elliot called her and laughed softly. "Breathe, Maya," he said. "This is good. This is what we hoped for." "I don't know how to respond to any of this," she admitted. "Just be yourself." That's what they're responding to. They scheduled meetings over the next 2 weeks. Because Maya still worked full shifts at Harbor Hope, she arranged them in the late afternoons. She refused to let the project pull her away from the youth who depended on her. The cafe wasn't just a job. It was the place that had taught her she mattered. She stayed grounded in its rhythm, even as her world slowly expanded. The first meeting took place in a small, independent studio tucked behind a row of old brick buildings. The producers greeted her warmly, impressed not by her resume, but by her sincerity. They asked about the cafe, about the teens, about why dignity mattered so much in her storytelling. Maya answered with her usual honesty, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled under the table. After nearly an hour of conversation, the studio head leaned forward. "We've launched a new program," he explained, one specifically designed to uplift underrepresented storytellers. We'd like to fund your short film through that program." Maya blinked, unable to speak. Elliot stepped in quietly, giving her space to process. What kind of support would that include? "Full production funding," the producer said. "Access to mentors, equipment, facilities. Everything needed to bring the film to life." Maya finally found her voice. "Why me?" The producer smiled gently. "Because stories like yours are the reason programs like ours exist." They sent her home with a folder outlining next steps. When Maya returned to Harbor Hope that evening, she walked in carrying the folder against her chest like something fragile and precious. Elena approached her immediately. "You're glowing," she said with a knowing smile. "Good news." Maya nodded, tears pressing behind her eyes. "They want to fund the film." Elena hugged her tightly. "I knew they would." Despite the whirlwind unfolding around her, Maya continued wiping tables, refilling cups, checking in with teens about their progress. The cafe remained her anchor. She never let excitement turn into ego, never let opportunity make her forget where she came from. Her world was growing, yes, but her heart remained right here in the place that had rebuilt her. And as she closed the cafe that night, she understood something she had never known before. Dreams didn't have to replace reality. Sometimes they could grow right beside it. The sun was dipping low when Maya finished locking up Harbor Hope for the night. The last of the volunteers had gone home, and the warm orange glow spilled across the quiet street, catching the edges of store windows and stretching long shadows along the sidewalks. It had been a long day filled with meetings, mentoring sessions, and one more round of adjustments to the short film concept. Her mind buzzed with ideas, but her heart felt peaceful. She lingered outside, letting the cool breeze settle her thoughts before heading home. She walked toward the boardwalk, wanting a moment of silence before catching the bus. The ocean air wrapped around her, carrying the smell of salt and distant music from a street performer. As she turned the corner, she noticed a familiar figure sitting alone on a wooden bench facing the water. He wore a simple black hoodie, jeans, and a cap pulled low enough to soften his recognizable features. But even from a distance, she knew him. It was Keanu. He wasn't surrounded by crowds this time. No flashing phones, no excited whispers. Just a man sitting quietly watching the horizon as the sun dipped into the Pacific. Maya slowed her steps, unsure if she should approach. But as if sensing her hesitation, Keanu looked up. His expression shifted into a warm, almost shy smile. He lifted a hand in greeting. "Maya," he said softly when she reached the bench. "It's good to see you." She sat beside him, the cool wooden slats creaking gently under their weight. "I didn't expect to run into you again." "I come here sometimes," he said. "It's peaceful, easier to think when the world gets loud." Maya nodded, understanding that sentiment completely. For a moment, they sat in quiet companionship, watching the sky fade from orange to pink to deep purple. The waves rolled against the shore in slow, steady pulses. After a while, Keanu's voice softened. "I've been wanting to apologize again for what you went through at the diner." "You already apologized," she said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." Still, he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Your kindness shouldn't have cost you your job. I hated knowing you were punished for doing something right." Maya smiled, feeling a warmth rise in her chest. "But if I hadn't been fired, I never would have ended up at Harbor Hope. I never would have discovered what I could do. Everything that happened after, it came from that day." Keanu turned toward her, his eyes calm and sincere. "You already had all of that inside you. I didn't create anything. I just didn't want to walk away from a moment where your kindness was treated like a mistake." Those words hit deeper than Maya expected. She exhaled slowly, letting the truth of them settle. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for that day, for what came after." He tilted his head, clearly puzzled. "What do you mean?" Maya hesitated, unsure of how to explain the whirlwind her life had become. But then she saw the patient curiosity in his expression, the same gentleness she'd witnessed the day he sat quietly in the diner, trying to avoid attention. And she knew he wasn't asking out of politeness. He genuinely wanted to understand. So, she told him. She began with the newsletter reflection, the one that had unexpectedly gone viral. She told him how the cafe staff reacted, how the teens reacted, how it felt to discover that her words could touch people she had never met. Then she explained the phone call from Elliot Granger, the mentorship that followed, and the short film treatment now making its way through independent studios. The more she spoke, the more surreal it sounded even to her. Yet every detail was true, unfolding one after another like a chain reaction she never expected. Keanu listened without interrupting. His expression shifted from curiosity to admiration, then to something like pride, though he didn't say it aloud. When she finished, she let out a small breath, embarrassed by how much she had just revealed. "I didn't mean to go on so long," she said. "No," he replied softly. "I'm glad you did." He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, and watched the waves roll in with slow, deliberate movements, as if he were trying to absorb every word she had spoken. "You've done something incredible, Maya. Most people go through their whole lives without discovering their voice. You didn't just find yours. You're using it to help others." She looked down, humbled by the sincerity in his tone. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm pretending. Like any minute someone will realize I don't belong in those meetings." "That feeling never fully goes away," he said. "Not for anyone who's trying to grow, but you do belong. You earned your place." She turned toward him, absorbing the quiet strength in his words. "Elliot thinks the studio might fund the film. If that happens, I don't even know what that means for my future." Keanu smiled gently. "It means you're becoming who you were always meant to be." They sat there for a few moments, letting the ocean wind cool their faces. Then, almost as if remembering something important, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I have a friend," he said. "She runs a foundation for emerging filmmakers. They focus on stories with heart stories that lift communities. I think your project fits that perfectly." He handed her the paper. It held a name, a phone number, and a small handwritten note of introduction. Nothing flashy, nothing exaggerated, just a quiet bridge he thought she deserved. Maya stared at it, overwhelmed. "I can't believe you do this for me." Keanu shook his head gently. "I'm not doing anything for you. I'm just giving you a path you've already earned. People will help you, Maya. Not because of me, because your work matters." Her eyes softened, filling with gratitude she couldn't put into words. They sat together in silence, again watching the sun disappear fully beneath the horizon, leaving streaks of deep violet across the sky. For the first time in her life, Maya felt not just hopeful, but grounded in that hope. She felt seen. She felt believed in. And that belief changed something fundamental inside her. With her voice, her courage, and the quiet support of someone who understood the value of kindness, she was stepping into a future she had never dared imagine. The night of the premiere arrived far sooner than Maya ever imagined. Months of writing, revising, planning, filming, worrying, and quietly daring to dream had all gathered into this one evening. The Independent Film Festival wasn't huge, but it had prestige because it highlighted emerging voices rather than established ones. It was known for discovering storytellers who spoke from the heart. And now, somehow, Maya Lopez was one of them. She arrived early with her mother and Elliot. Her mother rolled beside her in a sleek rental wheelchair, wearing a soft navy shawl and a glowing smile that made her eyes shimmer. It was the proudest Maya had ever seen her. Elliot walked slightly ahead, greeting festival staff with familiar nods. He had insisted on escorting Maya, saying it was her night, but he would stand beside her no matter what. People were already filling the venue lobby. Posters of all the films decorated the walls, but Maya's heart caught when she saw hers. The title, painted in simple, bold lettering, hung above a still image from the short film, a shot of Harbor Hope's front door at sunrise, glowing warm against the dark frame. The caption read, "A story about dignity, compassion, and second chances." She touched her mother's shoulder. "I still can't believe this is real." Her mother squeezed her hand. "You worked for this. Life just finally made room for the good you carry." Maya blinked back tears. Inside the theater, people shuffled to their seats. Directors, producers, students, journalists, community organizers, and local residents all murmured in anticipation. The atmosphere buzzed with hope and curiosity. Maya felt her stomach tighten, her breathing shallow, but Elliot placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Listen," he said softly. "No matter what happens tonight, your film already matters. You changed lives making it. Now you let it go." She nodded, though her nerves still crackled beneath her skin. As they moved toward their assigned seats near the front, Maya glanced around the dimly lit theater. A few rows back, she noticed someone sitting alone near the aisle wearing a simple dark beanie and a hoodie. He sat low in the seat, head slightly bowed, as if hoping no one recognized him. Even with the subtle disguise, she knew instantly. Keanu had come. He didn't approach her. He didn't draw attention. He simply offered a small, gentle smile when their eyes met. A smile that said he was proud of her without needing to say anything at all. Maya felt her breath steady. Somehow, seeing him there, quiet, supportive grounding brought her back to herself. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the audience. The festival director walked onto the small stage to introduce the evening's program. He spoke about the importance of authentic storytelling, the power of compassion and voices that rose from lived experience. Then he announced Maya's short film as one of the featured selections. Her heart pounded as the screen brightened. And then the first image appeared, the cafe door, the morning light, a young woman sweeping the patio, a teen practicing a job interview, a volunteer teaching someone to tie a tie. Moments of real life stitched together in soft, deliberate strokes. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it was honest, and the room fell completely silent. As the film unfolded, Maya listened to the audience breathe. They reacted not with applause or chatter, but with quiet, aching attention. She heard soft sniffles when a former foster youth described finding a place that didn't give up on me. She saw a woman dab her eyes when the scene of a young man practicing his first interview played. And in the glow of the screen, Maya could feel the emotion moving through the room like a tide. When the final scene faded, a sunrise over Harbor Hope, mirroring the opening shot, the screen shifted to black. For a moment, the silence held. Maya felt her chest tighten. Then slowly at first, the room erupted into applause. It grew louder, fuller, until the entire theater rose to its feet in a standing ovation. People were crying openly. Some clapped with both hands raised. Others pressed their palms to their hearts. Maya stood frozen, overwhelmed, until Elliot gently guided her to her feet. "You did this," he whispered. Her mother reached for her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Maya, mi cielo, you changed people tonight." The applause went on and on, washing over her like a wave she had never imagined herself worthy of. When the lights rose, audience members approached her almost immediately. A woman holding a press badge said she wanted to interview her for a human interest column. A teacher asked if she could show the film to her high school class. A local nonprofit director said the film captured exactly what they tried to teach about empathy. Maya tried to respond to everyone, though she felt breathless from the attention. Then a studio executive approached someone Elliot recognized immediately. He introduced himself, praising the emotional core of the film and the honesty of its storytelling. "Have you ever considered expanding this?" he asked. "A limited series, perhaps. Something that follows different individuals whose lives intersect around a place like Harbor Hope." Maya blinked. "A series?" "It has that potential," he said. "Call me if you're interested. I'd love to talk more." He handed her his card before drifting back into the crowd. Elliot chuckled softly. "Welcome to a new world," he said. "But don't worry, we take it one step at a time." Maya turned, scanning the rows of seats until she found the quiet figure in the back. Keanu stood slowly, offering her the same gentle smile he'd given her at the boardwalk. He placed one hand over his heart in a silent gesture of respect. She matched the gesture, her throat tightening. He didn't come forward. He didn't make himself the moment. He simply honored her from the shadows, proud, quiet, steady. The applause faded, but the warmth remained, settling deep in Maya's chest. Her life had transformed in ways she could never have predicted. And it wasn't luck, it wasn't fame. It was the power of kindness meeting the courage to step into a voice she had always carried. In the days following the premiere, the world around Maya felt as if it were expanding with every sunrise. Messages poured in from nonprofits, educators, film enthusiasts, and strangers who saw themselves reflected in her story. Elliot encouraged her to take a breath before making any decisions about new offers. Her mother reminded her to rest. Even Keanu left a quiet note at the cafe congratulating her, written in his soft, unmistakable handwriting. But despite the forward momentum, one thing pulled at her. A small knot in her chest, a weight she hadn't realized she was still carrying. The Harbor Grill diner. She had driven past it only once since the night she was fired. A quick glance through the window had been enough to bring back the embarrassment, the sting of injustice, the feeling of standing alone while the world watched. She had pushed those memories aside as her new life unfolded. But now, with her world shifting into something larger and brighter, she felt an unexpected urge to return. Not for revenge, not for validation, for closure. One cool morning before her cafe shift, she took a bus toward the Santa Monica boardwalk. The route felt strangely familiar, though her life was now unrecognizable compared to the last time she'd ridden it. The bus rumbled past busy storefronts, children heading to school, tourists snapping photos, and older locals heading to early breakfast spots. She watched the city as it moved, the same city where she had once felt so small. When the bus finally stopped near the diner, she stepped off and paused on the sidewalk. The Harbor Grill looked exactly as it had months ago. Same weathered awning, same neon sign flickering slightly at the edges, same rush of clattering dishes and chatter filtering through the windows. Her heart thudded once hard. She walked toward the entrance, the bell above the door giving its familiar tinny ring as she stepped inside. The room smelled of frying oil syrup and burnt coffee. A wave of nostalgia hit her, then tension, then something calmer beneath it. A server she didn't recognize greeted her warmly and motioned toward a booth. Maya smiled politely but declined. She wasn't here to eat. Behind the counter, Brenda Carson looked up from the register. Time had softened her face in subtle ways. Lines she didn't remember were etched deeper, and something in Brenda's posture seemed less rigid than before. Her eyes met Maya's, and the reaction was immediate. Brenda froze. "Maya," she said, almost breathless. Maya nodded gently. Brenda stepped away from the register, wiping her palms on her apron as if her hands had suddenly grown nervous. I didn't expect to ever see you again." Maya noticed the shift immediately. The sharpness Brenda once carried had faded, replaced by something she couldn't yet name. "I'm not here for trouble," Maya said softly. "I just needed to come back." Brenda glanced around the diner, as if expecting the moment to collapse under the weight of its own history. "Of course. Would you like to sit?" Maya nodded, allowing Brenda to guide her to a quiet booth near the wall. It was the same booth where a crowd once swarmed a tired actor who only wanted quiet. The same booth where kindness had cost Maya her job. She sat down, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt steady. Brenda slid into the opposite side of the booth, folding her hands tightly. She looked at Maya as if she were seeing a ghost, or perhaps a memory she had tried to bury, but never truly could. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Brenda cleared her throat. "You look different," she said. "Happier." "I am," Maya replied. "Life changed after I left here." Brenda swallowed, her eyes flicking downward. "I heard. People talk. One of the regulars said you were in some film festival thing." She gave a strained laugh. "I thought he was joking." Maya smiled softly. "It happened." Silence stretched between them again. Brenda opened her mouth twice before words finally emerged. "I want to say something," she said. "Something I should have said a long time ago." Her voice trembled slightly. "I was wrong that night. Not just a little wrong, completely wrong." Maya listened, her expression calm, patient. Brenda took a shaky breath. I thought I was protecting the diner's reputation. I thought having a celebrity here meant good publicity. And when you stepped in, I felt like you were ruining that. But the truth is, I wasn't thinking about anyone's dignity. Not his, not yours. Her voice cracked. You didn't deserve how I treated you. Maya felt a surprising softness bloom inside her. She had imagined anger, maybe bitterness. But instead she felt clarity. Thank you for saying that, she answered gently. It means more than you know. Brenda exhaled, almost collapsing into the booth. I've replayed that night more times than I can count. I kept thinking about the look on your face. I realized later that I fired you, not because you did something wrong, but because I didn't want to admit I had. She rubbed her eyes. I'm sorry, Maya. Truly. Maya nodded, letting the apology settle into the space between them. It didn't erase what happened, but it did release something long tangled inside her. I forgive you, she said simply. We were both going through things. Life is hard. People react in ways they regret. Brenda stared at her stunned. You forgive me. After everything? Yes, Maya answered. Because holding on would only keep me tied to the past, and I've worked too hard to move forward. Brenda covered her mouth, tears threatening. You turned out stronger than I ever imagined. Maya smiled. I always had it in me. I just needed places that let me show it. She stood signaling the end of the conversation. As she walked toward the door, Brenda followed her with her eyes not out of suspicion like before, but with something closer to respect. Stepping outside, Maya inhaled the ocean air. The sun was bright, the boardwalk lively, and for the first time since that painful night, she felt completely free. The weight she had carried for months lifted in a single gentle breath. She had closed the loop, and she was finally ready for whatever came next. The week after Maya revisited the Harbor Grill felt unusually calm, like the quiet breath a person takes before life shifts again. She returned to her routine at Harbor Hope, grateful to be back among familiar faces and steady rhythms. The teens greeted her with excitement about the film festival photos circulating online. Volunteers asked for updates. Even customers she barely knew congratulated her with warm smiles. Despite all the recognition, Maya moved through her days with grounded humility. She still wiped tables, still taught workshops, still reminded the youth that their stories mattered. She didn't want her life to drift into something unrecognizable. She wanted her new opportunities to grow from the same soil that had helped her recover her sense of worth. One afternoon, she was reorganizing the cafe's donation shelf when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. The number was unfamiliar, but something about the area code made her pause. She stepped outside to answer, expecting perhaps a reporter or festival coordinator. Hello, is this Maya Lopez? A polished voice asked. Yes, this is Maya. Wonderful. My name is Jordan Hayes. I'm calling on behalf of Meridian Studios. Maya froze. Meridian was one of the biggest streaming networks in the world, known for award-winning dramas, documentaries, and inspirational series that changed public conversations. She swallowed hard. What can I do for you? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. We saw your short film at the festival. Jordan continued. Our entire storytelling and development team was deeply moved. Your work captures humanity in a way we rarely see. We'd like to speak with you about an opportunity. Maya leaned against the brick wall, heart pounding. What kind of opportunity? A new anthology series, Jordan said. 12 episodes, each one exploring compassion through a different lens. We're building a writing team, and we would like you to lead one of the episodes. Maya's breath hitched. A writing team, creative control of an episode, at Meridian Studios. I don't know what to say, she whispered. There's more, Jordan added gently. This is a paid leadership role, a full contract. It includes a writer's salary, a creative stipend, and continued mentorship from senior producers. The world around her seemed to tilt. The clatter of cafe dishes inside faded into distant sound. She closed her eyes for a moment, gripping her phone with trembling fingers. I'm honored, she finally said. I just need a little time to think. Of course, Jordan replied warmly. We'll send details to your email. Take the time you need. And Maya, your voice is exactly what this industry needs. We sincerely hope you'll join us." When the call ended, Maya remained still, staring at the pavement as waves of emotion rolled through her. Shock, gratitude, fear, hope. It all braided together into something too big to name. She stepped back inside the cafe, her legs shaky. Elena saw her expression and immediately set aside the tray she was carrying. "Maya, what happened?" Maya's eyes brimmed with tears. I just got an offer. A huge offer." Elena rushed forward, taking her by the shoulders. "Tell me everything." And for the first time, Maya spoke the words aloud. "A major studio wants me to lead a writing team for a new series." The cafe erupted into cheers. Youth hugged her. Volunteers clapped. Even customers turned to congratulate her. It felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's life from across the room. But it was hers, and it was only beginning. Maya left the cafe early that evening, needing space to breathe and settle the whirlwind inside her. She walked along the boardwalk, the ocean breeze, cool against her skin, calming the storm of emotions still tumbling through her chest. The offer was extraordinary. It was life-changing. It meant stability, recognition, influence, and a real future carved from her own voice rather than the circumstances she'd been born into. But it also terrified her. She had never imagined being part of the film world, much less leading an episode for a massive streaming studio. The responsibility felt enormous. The risk felt even bigger. For most of her life, she had lived paycheck to paycheck, dreaming in tiny, careful steps because dreaming too big felt dangerous. But now she was being asked to leap, and she wasn't sure if her legs were ready. She spent the next morning at home with her mother, sharing the full details of the call. Her mother listened, tears forming before Maya could even finish. She reached out and took Maya's hands. "You are ready," she said softly. "Every decision you've made, every kindness you've shown, every hardship you survived, this is where it was all leading." Maya's throat tightened. "But what if I fail?" "Then you get back up," her mother replied. "But you won't fail. You've already proven you can rise above anything." Later that day, she called Elliot. The moment she finished explaining the offer, he didn't speak. He didn't breathe. Then she heard a small choking sound and realized he was crying. Do you understand what this means?" he asked, wiping his voice with a shaky breath. "You're not just talented, Maya. You're transformative. I've always believed it. Now the world is catching up." Through his tears came laughter, the warm, disbelieving kind that only appears when a dream becomes real. Hearing his joy made her cry too. That night, she sat at her desk with the contract details open in front of her. She thought of Harbor Hope, the teens who looked to her for encouragement. She thought of the cafe that had restored her dignity. She thought of everything Keanu's kindness had sparked. The offer didn't pull her away from that purpose. It amplified it. She could still work part-time at the cafe. She could still guide young people. She could still be the person she had grown into. But now she could also tell stories that reached millions. Before signing, she sent a single text to Keanu, not expecting a reply. "Thank you for believing in me." His response arrived seconds later. "Proud of you. Keep going." Maya pressed the tip of her pen to the contract, her hand steady at last. And she said yes. The evening air settled softly over the boardwalk as Maya stepped outside Harbor Hope. The cafe lights glowed behind her, warm and familiar, casting a gentle reflection across the windows. She paused on the sidewalk, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. After months of rebuilding, searching, learning, and discovering her own strength, she finally understood the shape of her journey. She understood why everything had unfolded the way it did. She understood what it all meant. She looked out toward the ocean, the waves moving steadily in their quiet rhythm. So much of her life used to feel like those waves, never stopping, never slowing, always crashing into something. Now, for the first time, it all seemed peaceful, clear, not perfect, but meaningful. And the meaning came from every choice she had made out of compassion rather than fear. When she thought back to that day at the Harbor Grill diner, she no longer felt the sting that once haunted her. She remembered the exhaustion, the humiliation, The moment she was forced to walk away from everything she depended on, but she also remembered the moment she found her voice. A voice she didn't realize she had until someone else was being mistreated. A voice she used not for herself, but for someone who simply needed a little kindness. That she realized was the turning point. Losing her job had felt like a collapse, but it was the collapse that cracked open everything she truly needed to see. She didn't lose her future that day. She found it. She found the courage to walk into something new. She found a world where her compassion wasn't a liability. She found people who valued her instincts. She found a calling she never knew existed inside her. Maya thought of Keanu seated on the bench that evening, weeks earlier, watching the sunset with that same gentle stillness he carried everywhere. She remembered the way he apologized not because he was guilty of anything, but because he genuinely cared how his presence had affected her life. She remembered the quiet sincerity in his voice when he told her she didn't need him to save her. She already had everything inside her to change her own path. He simply didn't want to see her punished for her goodness. Those words stayed with her. They lived inside her now. Kindness is never wasted, even when it hurts, even when it costs something, even when people misunderstand it. Kindness has a way of returning multiplied and transformed long after the moment has passed. Maya exhaled slowly, letting the truth of that settle. Her life had expanded in ways she could barely comprehend. She had new responsibilities, new challenges, new opportunities, and a future wider than anything she dared to imagine. But she was still the same person who stood beside that booth in the diner, determined to protect someone's dignity. She was still the woman who believed humanity mattered, even when others couldn't see it. She smiled softly to herself, realizing the irony. The act that cost her a job was the same act that revealed the life she was always meant to build. Maya stood a little taller as she walked toward the railing overlooking the beach. The waves below reflected streaks of silver moonlight, shifting gently with the tide. She rested her hands on the cool metal and allowed herself to truly feel everything she had held inside for so long. Gratitude, relief, pride, and something deeper than all of that clarity. She understood now that life had not rewarded her for suffering. It had rewarded her for choosing compassion, even when compassion came with consequences. The world often celebrates boldness, ambition, and success, but it rarely celebrates quiet integrity. Yet everything that had happened to her began with a single moment of it. A moment when she chose to protect someone else, even though she gained nothing from it. That choice had been the spark. Everything else was the flame that followed. She thought again of Keanu's message, the brief but powerful reminder he sent after she accepted the studio offer. Proud of you. Keep going. Those 4 words felt like a compass, pointing her toward the kind of life she wanted to build. A life guided not by fear or scarcity, but by purpose. Her mother's voice echoed gently in her memory. You already had the strength. You only needed someone to show you the door. And that was true. Losing her job had not stolen her dignity. It had revealed it. Maya smiled as the breeze lifted her hair. She imagined standing on a different kind of stage one day, telling her story not for praise, but for connection. She imagined young people watching her film or reading her work, seeing themselves in her journey, understanding that setbacks are not dead ends. They are invitations. They are openings. They are the cracks where new light enters. She imagined someone else somewhere in the world working a job that drained them, wondering if their kindness mattered. She imagined them hearing her story and realizing that kindness is powerful, even when the world does not know how to recognize it. She wanted her message to reach them. She wanted them to know that integrity often feels invisible in the moment, but its impact can stretch farther than any of us can see. She wanted them to know that sometimes the moment that breaks you is the one that finally reveals who you were meant to become. Maya closed her eyes briefly, letting that truth settle inside her. She felt the weight of the past lift from her shoulders completely. She felt the fullness of her present. She felt the quiet promise of her future. Then she turned toward the street, ready to walk home, ready to step into everything ahead with courage and gratitude, ready to keep going. And she hoped with all her heart that whoever heard her story would feel the same strength awaken within them. If you've been moved by Maya's journey, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more transformative stories.